If somebody came to me and said, Andy, we're never going to see you again, and we only have 30 seconds, and in 30 seconds we need you to tell us something that would give us a chance at doubling our results in a year. Well, I could do that.
Hi, I'm Donna Cruz. Welcome to CIA, Contagious Influencers of America, hosted by Keep the Faith Radio's executive producer, 9-time Emmy winner David Sams, and Victoria Robinson, co-host of the HGTV series My House is Your House.
Hey, thanks, Donna.
Victoria, we have somebody on the show today, and I know you have not met him.
I have not. I'd like to.
I have met him on numerous occasions. As a matter of fact, we've become pretty good friends.
Is he the one who motivated you to get on this health kick?
He's motivated me to make a lot of changes in my life. As a matter of fact, years ago, when I went through a divorce over a decade ago, and then I went through a very dark period, I even had a stroke. Mm-hmm. A buddy of mine gave me his book called The Noticer. First of all, not only was it a game changer for me, it was a lifesaver. It may be the most important book that I've ever read in my life.
Wow.
And I
That's
really
a pretty
do mean
big
that.
endorsement.
Andy Andrews, a New York Times best-selling author. By the way, this guy used to be homeless. This guy used to reside under a bridge.
Like literally
down on
under
the
a
coast.
bridge.
Yeah. He used to get into people's garages during the winter and sleep next to their freezers because there's a little heat coming from the bottom of the freezers.
And did the neighbors, people know he was in there?
No.
So he'd sneak in and sneak out before they knew it.
Yeah.
That's kind of creepy.
Yeah. He then ran into an old guy by the name of Jones. And I'm not going to go into that right now because that's not the reason we have him on the show today, even though he'll talk about that a little bit. But he's a New York Times bestselling author. So he's gone from homeless to #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list. He's written The Traveler's Gift,
The Butterfly Effect. Yep.
The Noticer, and, his new book that has just hit the market, it's on Amazon right now. It's called Bottom of the Pool, Thinking Beyond the Boundaries to Achieve Extraordinary Results. So here's my interview with the one and only Andy Andrews. And I'm telling you right now, take out your pen and paper and take notes because this guy is going to give you some life-changing nuggets.
Here it is, Andy Andrews.
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm great that you're here today. It's been a while, but I feel like we keep in touch because I've been listening to your wonderful podcast.
I have such a good time with that. I didn't know what to name that thing for a long time. And so I wanted to name it something very cool. And I think that is a cool name, The Professional Noticer.
Well, your book, The Noticer, is probably one of my absolute, and it may be my favorite, but it's one of my absolute books of all time.
Thank you, man.
It was a lifesaver for me because I had just come through a divorce of many years.
Right.
When you're in California, it takes forever to get divorced. And that one took 4 years. And then I had a stroke.
Oh,
and then you
Lord.
start questioning everything in your life.
Sure.
And, you got your kids in the middle. And so your book really helped bring me through that.
Well, The Noticer is such a simple story and it's about the worst time in my life and how this old man just out of nowhere, and we never knew where he went, never knew where he came from, and he was just this old guy who carried a suitcase around, but he was the first person to tell me the truth about myself, and he called himself a noticer. He said, when God was passing out talents, I didn't get the cool ones. I can't run fast, I can't sing great, but I notice little things that make a big difference in people's lives. And so that's what the book and the story is about. And that's what the podcast is based on, is The Professional Noticer. And we take questions and make some wild observations and some wise answers, we hope, and have a good time with it.
I think that's one of the reasons I so relate to you, because I think many times that God gave me this unique gift of looking at things.
Sure.
Not only differently, but usually I'm way ahead of the curve, which, by the way, can really, really bite you in the butt sometimes.
It can, because it's kind of a curse of smart people or something, because a lot of times if you're very smart, you'll be in a conversation with somebody and you're listening, but as they're trying to kind of figure out how to say it and what to say, you're kind of thinking, okay, I know where you're going. Come on. And because you know where they're going, you don't listen to that part, or you think about something else. And it's been a very curious thing in my life to find out that how could I possibly know where they're going? They don't really know where they're going yet. And so I'm missing some really critical stuff, some important stuff that somebody else may have the opportunity to think through for me. And I'm missing it by being impatient.
I will just say this. I heard about your book, your new book, about, you'd mentioned it on the podcast.
Right.
But I heard about it a couple of months ago, and I'm like, oh gosh, I can't wait to read that. And usually publishers just can't wait to throw a book in front of me so that I put the author on my radio show, right?
Right.
Let alone the podcast. So I'm waiting. I'm telling my show booker, where is it? And of course, I'm asking for the audio version because I know you do the audio.
Sure.
You do your own audio books.
I do them, yeah.
Right. Which is wonderful. But then I get this password protected thing from the publisher. And I get, by the way, this weekend, like 3 or 4 days before this, right?
Oh my gosh. This is like,
right.
Maybe they think this one's important.
Hold on. And I'm like, I can't wait to read this. Right? Okay. I have to show you what was sent out to me. Every page had this on it.
You have got to be kidding me. You're like, what, they think you're going to print it somewhere?
It's one of those watermark things where they put across every page like a big stamp. Copyrighted material by your publisher, right?
Like you,
like I'm going to put it on the internet.
Go put it on the internet or something.
Well, can you imagine?
That's very distracting.
Can you imagine trying to read those words?
Yeah, that's very distracting.
So,
I mean, David, you could have just called me,
So here's the deal, okay? We're going to do this interview, and I am just going to admit up front. By the way, the world's greatest press release, by the way, whoever wrote this, okay?
It says Emily.
Okay, Emily, you get the raise, okay? Because that really, really helped me know somewhat what the book's about. But because it's you and because I know the book's going to be phenomenal, I said, bring him on anyway. But, and I'm just being completely honest here, just putting it out there. I've not read I've read a couple words of the book in between that big watermark stamp on each page.
There you go. Well, admit it. The title of the book kind of sounds like a horror movie, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The bottom of the pool.
No, it's the bottom of the pool.
Oh, that's great. I'll tell you where the title came from. When I was a little kid, my parents used to drop us off at the pool. That was the babysitter for the summer, I suppose. We spent every day at the pool, and we got tired of playing the games. Marco Polo, atomic water ball. We just, all the things we played, we got tired of it, and we started making up our own games. And so this one year, I was like 11, and we made up a game called Dolphin. Flipper was on the air then. And so some people listening probably don't know Flipper. Think Lassie in a wetsuit, okay? So the same kind of thing. And so we, how Flipper would get up in the air, would just like get on his tail and like hover there. So that was our game, is to get in the deep end, circle up, and see one by one who could get up out of the water the highest. And so one by one we'd go, well, this kid always won. There's this one kid named Aaron Perry. He always won. He was bigger than we were. He was a year older, and he could just grab more water. He could just lift out. He won every time until one day, my best friend just like destroyed him. My best friend became the Dolphin legend because Kevin moved to the center, and after Aaron would take his turn, most of us just like, you almost want to leave, because he beat us every time. And so Kevin moves to the center, and we're all treading water. He says, "You ready? Ready?" And we're like, "Yeah, we're ready." "You sure you're ready?" "Yes, go." And so all of a sudden, instead of going up, he goes down. Under the water, goes down, and we're treading water, and we're looking. What is he doing? What's he doing? He goes all the way down to the bottom. And then he squats down at the bottom. Then all of a sudden, he pushes off the bottom of that pool and comes rocketing out of the top of the water. And man, he was like 1.5 feet above what Aaron had ever done in his life. We were just ecstatic. I mean, we were ecstatic. And of course, almost immediately, Aaron and his little toadies, are going, you cheated. And Kevin's like, oh, really? Well, where is the rule that says that you can't go down before you go up? And so we're like, yeah, where's that rule? Huh? And we're like, just splashing water in his face. And so they quickly agreed that wasn't a rule. But now that everybody got to do it that way. And pretty soon, Aaron was winning again because it was a new technique. It provided, it's almost like just a different level of achievement. But here's the crazy thing. If you looked at us at that time, we made up the game. So you could, it was the only place Dolphin was being played on the planet. Yes, but you could say we were the best Dolphin players on the planet, right? And if you ask us, are you doing the best you can do? We would say yes. I mean, we would study Aaron, how he held his hands, how he kicked. Are you doing the best you can do? Yes, we are. Okay, but we weren't doing the best that could be done because we didn't know there was any other way that existed. And so while all that we were doing, all the things that we were doing to try to get better and better, this is the way you do it. Well, that's true. But what had been so obvious for so long, when Kevin went down instead of up, now what was obvious wasn't even true. There was a whole new way of doing things. So I thought about that for years. And what has happened is I've begun to make connections for teams, for businesses, for organizations, to notice little bitty things that are below the surface, that are foundational to what they do. Most people live their life at the surface. Most people live their life with what is true instead of the truth, instead of going for the truth. Because did you know that something can be true and not be the truth? And that's the case in many things. And so most business people, most families, they stop at what is true. If they're looking for an answer and they get the answer, well, there's the answer, that's true. And so why would we keep searching anymore? We got the answer. It's true. It's producing. But there's a whole lot more ground to gain that people never look for because they only see their boundaries. They hear the industry standards. They hear people say, well, this is the way it's done. This is why it's done this way. This is what you can expect if you do it this way. And yet, the bottom of the pool, the truth, that connotes a foundation. It's as far as you can go, as far as you can explore. I mentioned a minute ago that something could be true and not be the truth. Think about this. If we took a blind person and said, we're going to allow you a little time with an animal that's inside this room. You had never heard of this animal before. It's called an elephant. I'm going to give you a few minutes with it, and we'd like you to come out then and tell us what an elephant is like and how an elephant could be used. And so this blind person would go in this room and spend a little time, and then maybe come out and say, okay, an elephant is very big, very tall, very wide, flat. It's flat. Could be used as a gate, I guess. You put several of them together and make a wall. Well, see, all that's true. That's true. But it's not the truth, because until we have the truth about an elephant, we would never have a complete picture of what one looks like, or would we have any idea of all the many different ways an elephant can be harnessed that we can use that shape and that power and that energy. And so what we're after in our lives, in our business, in our spiritual lives, in our relationships, is we're after the bottom of the pool. to not just ask why when things are wrong, but when things are going right, to say, why is this working the way it is? To understand not just the principle, but understand why the principle works as it does. Because until you understand why the principle works as it does, it's always just a single use kind of thing. But when you understand the organization of a principle, when you understand why that principle works as it does, you can begin to spot different things in your life that you can use that principle for that nobody else is even, they don't even think that even fits. And yet there are huge benefits there.
Mm-hmm. That reminds me, my good friend in Hollywood, Robert Evans. Did you ever meet Robert?
I didn't.
First of all, he was married to some of the most beautiful women on the planet, from Ally McGraw.
That's probably enough right there, isn't it?
Well, no, he. Well,
I mean,
he was the head of.
My friends say, "Well, he married Polly. What else do we need to know about him?"
He was the head of Paramount Studios. He's the guy that was responsible for getting The Godfather made and a bunch of major movies back in the day. But he always told me there are three sides to every story: yours, mine, and the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I was sitting with my son the other day. I'd said, "Hey, this is what we need to do," and he'd come back and said, "Dad, do we really have to do it that way?" And I said, "Yes." And we went over it again, and so he came in again, and I said, "Buddy, come back here and let's talk about something really quick." I said, "Do you know how much I love you?" And he said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Well, that's probably the right answer, but no, you really don't know how much I love you. You couldn't possibly know how much I love you because you don't have kids of your own. And until you have kids of your own, you just don't know what that feels like. I love you so much, it's just unbelievable." I said, "Your mom really thought she loved me until she had you." And then she said, "Wow, I don't really love him that much at all compared to what I love him." And so Adam, what I'm saying is, you know that I want the best for you because I love you that much. She said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Okay, let me ask you this. Do you believe God wants the best for you?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Okay, do you want the best for you?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Okay, well, it's curious to note that might be three different things, because whatever the best is, that's one thing. The best. We're not talking about among the best. We're not talking about some of the best of all time. We're talking about the best. There can be different categories, but the best for Adam's life is one thing." And I said, I strive toward it. I want to find it. I know that you want to find it. You strive toward it. I said, "But you and I sometimes disagree on what that is, right?" He said, "Right." I said, "Well, here's what I want you to know. Knowing that we want the best, and only God knows what the best is. If you disagree with something that I like, say this is how we're going to do this. If you disagree, I'm fine with that because I don't know everything. I don't know everything. I am wrong quite often. And so if you disagree with me, come and calmly say, 'Hey, Dad, can we think through this again? Because I'm still not sure about this.' I said, so here's what I'm saying we're going to do. We are going to talk until you convince me or I convince you, or we agree on a point somewhere in the middle. But that agreement is how we will move forward with our lives. That agreement is how we will move toward the best that God has for you."
Let's take our listeners back a ways to the obstacles you faced and how you overcame those obstacles. Because, one of the things that you address in your book, according to the press release,
according to what you've been able to read so far,
according to what I've heard in the pipeline here, is that we're faced with that whole hurdle, that whole obstacle of, well, this is the way it's done. These are the best practices, industry standards. It's always been done this way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you, early on in your life, you faced rejection. Right. I mean, as I recall, your first book that you did, Traveler's Gift?
The Traveler's Gift. And that was the biggest book to this day I've ever done. That was Good Morning America's Book of the Month. That was Good Morning America called it one of the 5 books you must read in a lifetime. And it's in 40 different languages, sold millions of copies around the world. And yet I know what you're referring to. The book was turned down by 51 different publishers. Right? I mean, now think about this. This book has had incredible success. And yet, 51 of the brightest minds in publishing said that what I had written was not worth putting on paper. I mean, they weren't just wrong. They were really wrong, right? And so when you look at that and you think, what happened? How did I keep going? How did because I have examined that too. And so one of the ways that I was able to keep going was to give those people some grace. I didn't want to be mad at them. They were just doing what they thought was best. I mean, if they thought it would sell, surely they would have published it. But they honestly didn't think the book would sell. They didn't think it was worth doing anything. Now, I felt like that was just something that God had given me, a dream about this book, about a vision, about this story, about a man. The Traveler's Gift's about a man going through a tough time, and he gets to travel through time, meeting with 7 historical figures who are also going through a tough time of their own. He gets to be with Anne Frank in the annex and talk with her and watch that situation unfold and question her. He gets to be with Lincoln at Gettysburg. And so 7 different people in the worst time of their lives. And so when I wrote that book, I knew I wasn't that great of a writer. I'm not that great of a writer, but I knew that God had something to do with that book. And so even though I was getting turned down over and over again, the thought that I kept clinging to is there's no way that God will teach you how to swim just to get you 50 yards offshore and let you drown. There's a purpose for this learning process. There's a purpose for this. And of course, a lot of that I learned during that time, a lot of that became valuable to a lot of people, not just me. The explanations of the things that were going on. One of the biggest things that I learned during that time is very simple, but it has guided a lot of my life, and it has led directly to this new book, The Bottom of the Pool. One of the things I learned is that you can't always believe everything you think. So think about that. We walk around every day and we know certain things. Have you ever known something? I mean, you knew it, you could argue it, and you could win the argument. Mm-hmm. And then you found out several months later, well, that wasn't exactly correct. If you've ever done that, does the possibility exist now that something you know for sure, your information might be incomplete? And you go, well, of course, Andy, of course, my information might be incomplete and something I know now. I agree. But the point is, we don't know what that subject is, and we don't know how many subjects that may cover. And so to live your life pursuing wisdom, to search for wisdom, just like you would search for a lost jewel or like a lost child. But most of us don't search for wisdom as hard as we search for our lost car keys. Mm-hmm. Okay. But if you look at a definition of wisdom, how do you know when you found it? How do you know when you got some wisdom? How do you know when that is occurring? Well, the definition for wisdom is a deeper understanding of principle. Okay, so then when you have a deeper understanding of principle, where do you go from there? Well, deeper, I guess, because it didn't say a particular mark. It said a deeper understanding. So you can continue on with a principle, with a subject, until you get to the bottom of the pool, until you get to the concrete, until you get to that foundation. And then, just like Kevin Perkins, when he pushed against that bottom of the pool and won that game of Dolphin, until we get to the foundation of something, we'll never be able to harness the power that is there. to be able to push against, to use, to create the results that are also there if we would just claim them. Relationships have to be about understanding. Growth has to be about understanding. And somewhere along the way to understand, somebody has to explain. There has to be an exchange of explanation and understanding, and a deeper understanding, and then a better explanation, and then a deeper understanding, maybe from the other side of the equation, and a better explanation there. I pray every day, God, help me to understand things you want your people to understand. That if they did understand, they would live the lives you have for them to live as the best. And God, give me simple ways to explain these complicated things that are confusing people.
It seems to me like your curriculum should be in schools.
Well, actually some of them are. And there is a curriculum for this book that it's out right now with the book. But there is a difference on my curriculums. There's a curriculum for the Traveler's Gift. There's a curriculum for the Noticer, for the Heart Mender, for the Butterfly Effect. We have curriculums for the K through 2 with the Kid Who Changed the World. And there's curriculums in literature and in history, creative writing. And here's the crazy thing. These curriculums came about because we saw curriculums for books that were thousands and thousands of dollars. We realized that a lot of them just didn't get out there. And so what I did is I funded the curriculums, and I make those curriculums available for free. Those curriculums are available to teachers, to principals, to school administrators, absolutely free. You can just go on andyandrews.com, and there is a place there that teachers can get into to get the entire curriculums and download those curriculums for free. And right now there's over 2,500 school systems in America that are using the curriculums for one of these books. And so the bottom of the pool, this critical thinking element, it has its own curriculum, and it's brand new. And so a lot of high schools are already taking this curriculum and preparing it for this next year, because I think a lot of people believe critical thinking is where we are laying down on the job and raising this next generation, that we need to teach not just what the answer is, but how do you arrive at that? What is your thinking process? And so the bottom of the pool is basically that. I mean, the subtitle is Thinking Beyond Your Boundaries to Achieve Extraordinary Results. And man, I'll tell you, this material has achieved unbelievable results.
First of all, I have to applaud you for taking that step and putting your content in the schools, and the fact that you're just making it available for free. That's I had no idea. Thank you for doing that. It seems to me like when we're growing up, when we're a kid, we have this kind of attitude you're talking about. It's the can-do attitude. And
right.
then you're told so many times, no, no, no. You're rejected so many times. You get just beat to the ground. And then all of a sudden, that's your way of thinking. That's right. Just the way it is. That's the way the deal is. That's the industry standard, so to speak. Okay. Yeah. So how do we get that kid thing back? How do we have a reboot?
One of the greatest ways to do this is that simple 3-letter question that most of us had kind of purged from us as children. That 3-letter question is why? I mean, when we were little kids, there was a point that most of us were scolded for asking that. Right? We said, Dad, why are trees green? Well, God made them green. Okay, well, why did God make them green? Green was his favorite color. Why was green? Look, don't ask me that anymore. This why thing is getting out of hand. In fact, don't ask me why about anything. And so, you get raised kind of, don't ask why. They get kind of aggravated when you ask why too many times. And so, as we grow up, we only ask why when things are wrong, when something's wrong, when it's broken. Why is this not working like it was? Why is this not happening like we thought it should? Why is this? And so we ask why until we get an answer, and then things get back on the even keel. They get back to working like everybody else knows it should work, or growing like everybody else has seen it grow. But nobody ever asks why when it's working, right? I mean, to apply why is this working like it's working? Why are people saying yes to this concept? Why are we having more success on Thursday mornings? Why is this happening like it? Because when you start asking those questions, you can start finding things that you can apply to different areas of your parenting, that you can apply to different areas of your marriage, that you can apply to different areas of your business. And when you start applying things that absolutely work in different areas, you start getting success and results that nobody has ever gotten before. And you'll get results that stun and astound everyone around you.
And you have to do it in a lightning bolt sort of way these days, because you have to be able to change on a moment's notice like that. Otherwise, you're a dinosaur. The world is moving so quickly. And so for you to get stuck in that state of mind that, well, it's always been done like this. Maybe we could get away with that 20, 30 years ago, but man, you can't really sit around and think about it too much anymore.
Yeah. I work with a lot of companies and organizations, sometimes entire cities have hired me to be a noticer for them. I had a client that after 19 years in business, they had done $5.4 billion in business. And so I worked with them, and in the first year, they doubled. 19 years to 5.4, but in 1 year went to 11.2 billion. But the thing is, do I know anything about their industry? No, I really don't. But I can get them thinking in ways that people who are experts in their industry would never get them thinking in. One night I got off the phone, and we had some of these unbelievable results with this material. And Polly said, well, how is this happening if you don't know anything about their company? And I said, it's a philosophy of thinking. I said, consider it this way. I said, if somebody saw me in an airport and they said, Andy, we only have 30 seconds with you and we're never going to see you again, and we need you to give us something in 30 seconds that would help us increase by 15% a year for the next 10 years. If somebody asked me to do that, I couldn't do it, because that is how the best in industries do. The best increases 15 or 20% a year after year after year. That's what the best do. And so for me to help somebody get into that category like that, it would require a knowledge of their industry. However, if somebody came to me and said, Andy, we're never going to see you again, and we only have 30 seconds, and in 30 seconds we need you to tell us something that would give us a chance at doubling our results in a year. Well, I could do that. And the way I would do that is I would say, okay, you want a chance at doubling your results in a year. Look at your industry, look at what everybody does, and then turn around and go the opposite direction. Because you wanted a chance, right? Okay, well, look at your industry. Do you see anybody doubling? Has anybody ever doubled? I mean, if you want a chance at doubling, don't do what they're doing. The answer is somewhere the other direction. It's not there. And so to begin to think about, how do we really get results? To take people, to take sales teams and say, hey, customer satisfaction is a ridiculous goal. And they look at me like I'm out of my mind. And I say, look, customer satisfaction, think about that. Do you want, we have to have satisfied customers. Oh, that's true. But the truth is that customer satisfaction is the lowest bar you can possibly hit and still stay in business. Anything lower than a satisfied customer, you're in trouble. And so if you're competing against other people that are only wanting to satisfy their customers and you're wanting to satisfy your customers, I guess what you're hoping is that somebody else will screw up so badly that their customer won't be satisfied. But that's a waiting game. It's nothing in your control. And so what you want to be is you want to be extraordinary. You want to be valuable. You want to have value way beyond. See, people compete with price and product. And this is part of this book, The Bottom of the Pool, but people compete with price and product. And yet, there is something that trumps price and product. We have all paid more for something than we had to. We've gone to more trouble to get something we had to. Well, that doesn't make any sense on the surface of things. But at the bottom of the pool, you understand, yeah, I know Walmart's right across the street, but I will always go to that lady's shop. Have I ever told you what she did for my grandmother 14 years ago? And because it's what they've done. It's what they've become to us. We're showing loyalty. We're showing gratefulness. If you want to compete for the heart of people, we need to explain to people not just how it will work, but why it works as it does.
You have been a publishing phenomenon. I mean, you really have been. I mean, going from where you were, for the listeners who are not familiar with where you came from, I mean, you were homeless.
Yeah, I lived under a pier.
You lived under a pier. You were raiding people's freezers in their garages.
Only in their garages. I never went into the houses, but I did go into some garages along the beach there.
You, through your relationship with Jones, right?
Right. This old man.
You started. You were encouraged to read biographies of all these greats.
Right.
Right.
Over 200 biographies I ended up reading of these happy, influential, financially successful, great people.
And you mentally worked yourself out of this rut, right?
It was a thinking thing.
Yeah.
Because I did, as I'm reading those books, I did start to think, where do these people come from? Were they born this way? Because if they were born this way, I'm out of luck. But if it was something they did, what did they do? And how long did it take them to do it? And those were the questions that fueled me.
And that inspired you to write The Traveler's Gift?
Right. Because my answers were, what do they do? I found 7 things. There's 7 things they had in common. 7 things. They weren't 7 habits. They weren't, they weren't 7 labors or 7 ideas they weren't even mine. I just identified them. But it was curious to me that it seemed like every one of these people had harnessed a couple of them, that they knew they had them and they used them. And we could look at their lives through the passage of time and we could see that they had all 7. I just wasn't sure they knew they had all 7.
And those 7 things were?
Responsibility, seeking wisdom, taking action, having a decided heart, choosing your mood, an emotional IQ, living in a spirit of forgiveness, and persisting without exception. And all those things seem like, I've heard those. But there are things within these that actually give you keys to controlling your life. Because you have been given free will. You've been given choice. And a lot of people say, well, choices determine our destiny. If you want to make sure your kids do one thing, make sure they make good choices. Okay, well, that's one of those kind of things that's true, but it's not the truth. Choice is not the bottom of the pool. A choice, what does a choice do? What does it choose? It chooses an action. All right, so an action, what does that yield? It yields a result. And so those results over time become our culture. They become who we are. That's so that those choices determine who we are. But people leave out because they either haven't identified it or they don't know how to explain it. They leave out the foundation of it all, and that is your thinking. Your thinking is at the bottom of the pool. It is your thinking that determines your choices. And if you ever doubt that, just remember that every choice you've ever made in your life, every choice you will ever make in your life is totally determined by what you think and how you think and how long you think about it and what you decide you don't need to think about so that you won't be distracted from thinking about what you got to think about so that you can. It's our thinking. But the brilliant news, this is God's greatest paradox, that yes, our thinking determines our choices, but we can choose how we think. And, people say, well, how do you choose how you think? You can choose how you think because you can choose what you listen to. I mean, what are the things that kind of bump your thoughts? What are the things that create your thoughts? What are the things that get a thought chain going? It's what you read, it's what you listen to, it's what you watch, it's who you're around. And you can choose these things. And probably more important to choosing how you think, you can choose who you will not be around. You can choose what you will not read, what you will not watch, and what you will not listen to. I had a guy ask me the other day, he said, I have a real problem with, choosing my thinking. I have a problem with my beliefs. And I said, well, what you believe about yourself is so strong, it's so powerful, you can't perform against it. And he said, yeah, I know, but I just have a hard time thinking that and I said, look, here is a way to consider it. I said, let's say you have a meeting tomorrow with a potential client, and they're either, yes, they're going to be a client, or no, they're not going to be a client. And so as you go to bed tonight, you're thinking about that meeting tomorrow, and your presentation has to be pitch perfect. The way you connect with this guy has to be good because you got to get a yes out of him. And so as you're thinking about it, you're thinking about how he might come to the meeting, and you're thinking, man, I hope he comes to the meeting rested. I hope he hadn't been out with those friends and listened to, I hope he's not listening to these people tell him da 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 da. And then that's what he's thinking about. Oh, I hope he hasn't read that article about so and so and so. Now, the reason you hope those things and think about that is because you know that whatever he does, it's gonna get into his thinking. It's gonna create how he is when you have to talk to him and you have to get him toward a yes. You know that. Okay, so, the same is true of you. As you look at yourself, gosh, I hope he doesn't go into the meeting discouraged. I hope he doesn't go in the meeting. I hope he doesn't listen to those people who tell him that da-da-da-da. Okay, well, you don't have to listen to those people because you're the person. You can decide about you. Well, I hope he doesn't read that article that just discourages him and makes him wonder about his profession. Okay, well, you can choose. You're the one who can decide. It's you. So don't read the article. We can choose our pathways. We can choose how we think. God has given us that ability.
How do you these days manage your relationship with those who are generally scared? They are generally just trying to survive. They're generally just trying to continue to be relevant. And let's take your publisher, for example,
okay,
right? But the book publishing business, the music business, these businesses have been turned upside down.
Right.
I mean, the world has changed, like, even since we first met. Oh my gosh.
Sure.
And here you are, you continue to be a New York Times bestselling author, but you've got to be surrounded by people who are scared of their shadow now because the world is changing so radically.
Right.
Okay. How do you deal with that and give them this encouragement and get them to believe the words that you put down on paper?
See, in this book, The Bottom of the Pool, this is information that will change your thinking. I tell people a lot of times that I am into proof. I'm not into encouragement so much. I'm into proof. Okay, because I can encourage you, and that'll last until the first crazy thing that happens in your life. All right, encouragement has to do with your feelings and your emotions, and maybe helping a wave to crest in your emotions, so that you're so fired up, and you're gonna go out here and you're gonna do this and this and this. But Monday comes and you go, man, why was I even thinking that? Good grief, wow, we were all so fired up. And
then we lost 59 to nothing.
Right. And then reality hit. Well, see, here's the thing. If I can offer you proof, and I'm not talking about proof, mathematical proof. I'm talking about proof beyond a reasonable doubt. That I explain something to you in a way that you hadn't heard it that way before, or it makes sense in a way it's never made sense before. It's that kind of proof where you hear something or see something, you go, well, that makes total sense. I've never thought of it that way. I guess I'll never think of it any other way again. Well, at that point, when you learn something that you didn't know, and you learn how to harness something that you didn't know you could harness, then you become naturally encouraged. But it's based on truth. It's not based on emotion. Proof has to be truth. Because at any time you suspect that it's not the truth, you're no longer encouraged. That no longer is proof. And so we have to think things through to the bottom of the pool. And there are many different ways that you can help people in a changing world understand that they don't have to be scared. One of the ways is explaining what fear actually is. And see if this makes sense to you, that the smarter you are, the more likely you are to react in a fearful manner with business situations. And here's why. Have you ever seen that? There's some television show where these people do these stupid things. And, I look at these people and I think they can't be very smart, right? Because it's like, you're going to do. All right. Now, smart people tend to deal with fear more because of what fear is. Fear is nothing in the world but a misuse of the creative imagination that has been placed in you. As a smart person, you have a great imagination, and that imagination is to be used properly. You use your imagination to move forward. There is not a thing within sight of us here, not this couch, not this microphone, not this coffee mug, not these doors, not this room. There is nothing that ever existed in physical form that wasn't first in somebody's imagination. Now that is using it properly, but to take your imagination and go, well, I wonder if this happens, then that's going to happen. Well, that could happen. There could be a cliff out there, and we could, if we're just going for a walk in the woods, but we don't know. There might be a cliff, and if there's a cliff, we could fall off the cliff, and then the land crumble out, and the whole family but that's just imagination. It's not reality, and it's a misuse of it. And remember, you can control your thinking. You can, not only is your thinking determine your choices, you can choose how you think. And so to think properly, to think differently to a better conclusion, these are processes that you can learn. They're simple. Are they easy? No, they're not necessarily easy, but they're simple. And once you understand it and practice it, it's amazing how quickly it comes into focus.
So what is the first step that someone listening right now can take to get on that path? The very, very first step, what do you have to do?
Look at what you're putting inside yourself. Look at what you're feeding yourself. Okay? I mean, very carefully. in times of crisis, or in times that I need, I don't need my mind to wander into empty halls, right, where I'm coming up with my own crazy stuff. In those times, I very carefully direct my thinking, because I make sure that at every moment there's going to be a pause in my day, or I make sure that I'm listening to something. You know, if I can't read something, I'm gonna be ironing in a hotel room, or if I'm gonna lay down and rest my eyes for a minute, then I turn on something. I turn on Audible. I don't necessarily turn on music, because I don't, the right kind of music is awesome. But if you're looking to direct your thoughts, find some spoken word. Find some stuff that is spoken word that you can turn on, that your mind, as it's taking in these words, it can't go anywhere else.
Is that what you mean by, in your book, a mind has wings? What are you referring to?
Well, a mind has wings refers to a specific event that happened in 1968. It's a story I built around the long jumper Bob Beamon. For years and for 100 years, the long jump was an Olympic record that it was only broken 13 times in 100 years. And every time it was broken by a half inch, or, a quarter of an inch, but only 13 times in 100 years. And so the long jump record stood at 27 feet. Well, some things came together on a day in the Olympics in Mexico City, and some things came together, and a guy said to him right before he jumped that your mind has wings and it can take you places, and you're going to do this. And this guy, inexplicably, his name is Bob Beamon, he jumped more than 2 feet past the record. I mean, this was in 68, right? And so to this day, that Olympic record, I mean, we went back to this inching along thing, and to this day, the Olympic record hasn't caught up with that one jump. Now, here's what's very curious. It's very curious. People began to immediately ask, can Beamon do it again? Can he do it again? He never did it again. Now, this is where the mind has wings. It's a very curious thing, because they asked this over and over, can he do it again? Can he do it again? And I'm sure he was reading those things too, and that as he didn't do it again, the questioning intensified. The world press, can he do it again? Can he do it again? Can he do it again? The answer, it was such a crazy thing, because it was the wrong question. It was the wrong question, because the question should have been, will he do it again? Because can he do it again? Of course he can do it again. He already did it. We know that his body can do it. We know that can he do it again? Absolutely. Will he? I don't know. But when you say, can he do it again? And everybody started saying no. It clipped those wings that Bob Beamon had. A mind has wings. It can soar, but a mind also has an anchor. And that anchor can firmly stick you where you are. For a moment, his mind expanded. So physically, could he do it? Physically, he was able to. And mentally, his mind had wings and allowed his body to do that. But just as certainly, over the next few years, in the same shape, even in the same stadium sometimes, his mind would not allow his body to do it again.
How do you imagine beyond imagination?
Your imagination is perhaps the most powerful earthly gift you have been given. You'll read biographies of great people who didn't have a lot of self-discipline. You'll read biographies of great people who succeeded in unbelievable things and they didn't have a lot of money. And you'll read biographies of people who did incredible things and they didn't have a lot of education. But you will never read a biography of somebody who did some great things and didn't have a great imagination. So we're not talking about a Walt Disney kind of imagination. We're talking about that kind of creative thinking, that imagination that allows you to imagine what you need to avoid here. It allows you to imagine what the answer may be, and it allows you to imagine a future that you can move toward. And so you can click that into gear. That can help, right? If I say to you, how do we get this car that won't start from the front yard to the backyard? And you might say to me, I don't know. And then my question to you would be, okay, well, if you did know, what would you do first? Well, I don't know. Okay, but imagine you did know. Now, let's just imagine. Let's put that on the board. Imagine you knew. So what's going on? Imagine you knew, and imagine it's getting to the backyard. What's going on? What's happening? You can put that imagination into gear. It sounds silly, but if you think you don't have an imagination that works well, I want you just to imagine that you have a great one. Just for a minute, imagine you have a great one and act like you have a great imagination, just for a minute. That's all this is. We are our thinking. We're controlling. We're choosing our thinking. We've been given the opportunity of free will. We've been given the opportunity of choice. And so to choose what we think and what we think about and how we think so that we can choose those results. We make that responsible choice. It's a process of thinking. It's a process of imagination.
So I should continue to think that Jennifer Garner will return my call for dinner.
No, you don't have to imagine that anymore. She won't. Because I imagine she won't.
Your imagination's bigger than mine, right? Yeah. I want to ask you about the whole idea. I see in your book, you're breaking rules again, Andy. You have chapters 7.5, 16.5.
Sure.
Are you just doing that to rattle our cage and think, oh my gosh? Wait,
no, I put the preface after the 5th chapter. Mm-hmm. All right. Now, let me tell you why I did that.
Why did you do that?
Okay. It's not just to rattle your cage. It's to show you the benefits of thinking differently. If you're like me, when you read a book and you open it up and it has a preface, an introduction, a foreword, most times I just want to read the book. I cannot tell you how many prefaces I have skipped. Have you ever skipped prefaces?
All the time.
All the time. Yeah, all the time. And so I really wanted, in this book, I wanted people to read my preface because I had some important information in that, and I wanted them to read it. So by putting it after the 5th chapter, people read it even if they're reading it because they think some massive mistake has been made here. Oh my God, the publisher put this preface in the wrong place. Oh, look at this. Isn't this funny? This is a New York Times best-selling book, and it's like, it has this massive mistake in it. And so they examine the preface and they read it and they look and so look, this is what would be in the. And the bottom line is,
no, you're not scared they're going to take it back to the bookstore and say, "Hey, there's something wrong with the book. I'm returning it."
no. But see, this just proves, because I just wanted them to notice the preface and read the preface. And so what I did, because the publisher immediately, when I did that, the publisher said, "You can't do that." And I went, "Really? Now tell me why I can't do that." "Well, this is not the way it's done." Okay, so there's a law, a rule, a publishing law. There's some penalty if we put it somewhere else. Well, there's not a penalty, but you just don't do that. Really? Okay, well, see, here's what I'm looking at, is that you're saying that traditionally the preface goes at the first of the book. What I'm saying is, okay, traditionally people don't read the preface. Okay, I'm assuming somebody wrote the preface because they thought it needed to be read. Okay, well, after years and years and years and years, prefaces are not being read. I mean, in fact, you could say it has turned into a tradition to not read the preface. So traditionally, the preface goes to the first of the book, and traditionally, the preface is not read. Okay, I want the book to be read. I want to create a new tradition. I want mine to actually be read. So I'm not going to go along with the tradition that says it goes in the place where nobody reads it.
Yeah, you put it that way, and I'm thinking to myself, oh gosh, over my career, I worked with some amazing people who just have had that gift of looking at things just a little differently, right. Using the same elements but putting them in a different order. And probably one of the greatest examples is my old friend Merv Griffin, who created Jeopardy.
Right. Sure.
And that is where you present the answer with the question.
Right.
It's just
same
backwards.
Old thing. Just absolutely
instead of
opposite.
Asking the question, you give the answer, and then you got to come up with the question. And,
exactly.
And look, Jeopardy's now been on, and it's Alex has been hosting it for since 35 years, and before that was Art Fleming, so it's been on for ever. Right. Simple concept of looking at things a little differently,
and that brings great success. Because everybody knows the way to do it. Everybody knows. One of my best friends is a songwriter, Jimmy Yeary. And Jimmy's had Song of the Year, and he wrote I Drive Your Truck, and just a great friend of mine. But talking to Jimmy about songwriting, jillions of people write songs. Well, how many ways can you say, I love my father? Okay, I mean, that's how you say, I love my father. I love my father. Okay, but if you can say it in a totally different way, it has gravitas. You'll never forget it. You can say, I love my father, or you can say, I love the man who taught me how to fish. One of those you really remember, and it brings a picture to your mind. And so it's just being different with value, not being different for difference's sake. All right. I didn't put the preface, after the 5th chapter just to be a goofball. I wanted to show in this book about thinking differently and the benefits of thinking differently. I wanted to show a real life example of, what percentage, let's say if 20% of prefaces were being read in all books, and all of a sudden this book has 95% of the people reading the preface, that's a massive, massive result. And it didn't take a ton of effort. It just took some different thinking.
Yeah. I want to just end by asking you, what is it for a guy who seems to have it together, is a successful family man, lives in a beautiful place, has a wonderful career, storied career.
Who are we talking about?
I'm just wondering for you, what is it that you want? We all go through this thing where, wow, if I just had this and I just had that, and then you get that and you get this and you get the bigger show and you get the big book and you get the kids are doing great. But at the end of the day, what is it that you really want?
I have really come to understand how to explain to myself that what I really want is God's best for my life. I really want God's will for my life. Now, I am aware that sometimes, I hate to say this, but sometimes I'm aware I don't really want that. As much as I say it, in the past, I'm aware that I have prayed, God, please, your will be done. Just, God, your will for my life. And then get right up and think, but don't touch my kids. Because if something happens to my kids, God, you and I are going to have a problem. Or, God, I want your will for my life. And I would also like a boat sometime before I die. If your will could include a boat, God. And it's frustrating because you're supposed to want God's will, but it's frustrating because you realize, gosh, sometimes I just don't. And I'm sorry, God, please forgive me. Please forgive me. I won't do that again. And then you immediately do it again. And you don't know how to get out of that. Well, I read in Psalms, where David, here's a man after God's own heart. David prayed, God, help me to want your will so that I can follow your will more closely. I thought, that's it. Because I know that as much as I think I might want a boat, that God's best for my life, the best, I don't know if that would include a boat or not, but if it doesn't include a boat and I'm sitting here thinking about a boat, God, please take that desire away from me if that's not in your will. I'm fine to not have that desire. I want to only desire your will. Help me to want your will so that I can follow your will more closely. And so part of following God's will more closely has a lot to do, for me, has a lot to do with helping people to understand certain things. I want to help people live the lives they would live if they only knew how. And this is part of why I created WisdomHarbor.com. WisdomHarbor.com is a web portal that covers the gamut on so many things that'll make people better parents, better business people, better personally, better in all parts of their life. And so this harbor, and it's not just me, there's many participants in this, but a harbor has different docks. And so this has a question and answer doc, a bet you didn't know doc, an audiobook doc, a songwriter doc. It has so many different how do I doc, and in other words doc, and so many different things. And it's a subscription site. It's $17 a month. We wanted to price it that way so that everybody could do it, so that every time everybody got on it, they'd feel like, man, I got my $70 worth that moment, because we want to show people how to increase the size of their businesses, how to increase the peace in their family, how to increase their effectiveness as parents. And we want, that is what I want to do with my life, is help people live the lives they would live if they only knew how.
That's Harbor Wisdom?
Wisdom Harbor.
Wisdom Harbor.
And that's Harbor with a U. That's a Wisdom, HARBOUR, because it's not about me. It's about you. This is an OUR. It's not mine. It's ours. This is a place we can get in there, walk the docks, have a cup of coffee, and see a 5-minute video that starts bet you didn't know that Einstein's brain is actually in a safety deposit box in New York City. I mean, you think about the cultural...
Is it really?
It really is. It really is. But you think about the cultural things that we can become culturally literate. There's an In Other Words doc, right, that has, there's all these speeches that we've heard of. You hear To Be or Not to Be. And we say, yeah, Shakespeare. I can't remember where it's from. And so there's like these 4 and 5 minute videos. It's like 2 minutes of that you recognize. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler to suffer the swings. And then you get 2 minutes of that, and it goes, in other words, what Hamlet was saying here, and this real smart alecky explanation that's very funny with all these things flying in on the screen. And so there's an audiobook doc where you can listen to some classic books without that weird language that makes it where you can't understand it right now. And there's The Call of the Wild by Jack London is up there. And so everything is available for $17 a month. I mean, it's an awesome thing. And, you might have a financial question answered by somebody who, that you recognize who they are. And we're having live events on there, contests on there, and everything is available for $17 a month. WisdomHarbor.com. It's HARBOUR. There is so much stuff going on there from so many different people. And on the How Do I doc, we've got some people teaching some stuff that you're just going to be amazed. You want to know how to make jerky? You want to learn how to juggle? You want to learn how to play the guitar? You want to learn how to shuck an oyster? Go to the How Do I doc, right? And there's so many different things on this that can create conversations at water coolers, that can move your family ahead with what they have as dinner table conversation, with what they're able to share on trips together, right? I mean, there used to be things, David, when you and I grew up, that parents and children could enjoy together, that we truly enjoyed some of the same shows. When by the time my kids grew up, my wife and I, we don't want to watch any of that. And then there was stuff that we watched that we wouldn't dare allow our children to watch just because of the commercials that might come on during it. And so we wanted to create something that, the Bet You Didn't Know doc leans heavily towards science and history. And these are 4 and 5 minute videos done by the cool high school teacher you wish you'd had.
I have to tell you, I'm excited to check this out because, first of all, I love podcasts.
Right.
Right. And I love your podcast. I love how authentic it is. The one thing I cannot stand about podcasts these days, there are over 700,000 of them as we tape this. We're approaching 750,000 podcasts. At some point, everybody in the world will have their own podcast.
Yeah,
it's
that'll be part of the 50 minutes of fame, I guess.
Have you noticed that everybody's a life coach?
Right.
Everybody on the planet is now a life coach.
And you know what? You and I, we were laughing about this before we ever went on the air. If you want a life coach, you want to check out the fruit on the tree, right? I mean, you there's somebody to get information. I mean, if you want to get information about raising your kids, find somebody who has already raised the kind of kids you want to raise, right? Find somebody with the fruit on the tree. And this is one of the reasons that I say, the Professional Noticer is the podcast, and WisdomHarbor.com, Wisdom Harbor with a U, that's my life's work, is because it's taken me a long time to learn what I learn and to learn how to learn. For a long time, the publishers would say, we need a book a year out of you. We need a book a year because we got to brand you. And I'm like, I'm not learning enough to write a book a year. I have to go be around my family. I'm actually writing these books. I'm actually I want the books to be valuable, not a rehash of something we've already done. And so these things, my focus these days is on a book I may be writing, on wisdomharbor.com, and on The Professional Noticer, the podcast.
Well, that's wonderful. The book is called The Bottom of the Pool, Thinking Beyond Your Boundaries to Achieve Extraordinary Results. Andy, it's been so great having you. We have to do this more often.
Buddy, I will do this anytime you want to do it. I have a blast coming up here doing this with you.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, buddy.
So what did I tell you?
You were right on the money. Wow.
Well, of course I was.
Okay. All right, mister. This guy's incredible.
I have to be Mr. Positive Thinking. We just
Well,
heard
you better
the
be
most
Mr.
positive
Positive Thinking because you're reading Andy Andrew books.
That's right. That's right. Like I said, he changed my life. When I read The Noticer, honestly, I'd just gone through a divorce. I had a stroke and I felt a very dark place. I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel there was any value to me.
You know how many people right now that are listening, David, feel that same way? They're in a hole and they think there's no light at the end of the tunnel.
I think we all go through a time where we feel like we're suffocating, where we're,
It's called being alive, David. It's called humanity. Sure. I mean, if you think we're going to have great days every day, then I got some land to sell you out in the swamps of Florida. I mean, you're going to have good days and bad days. But I think on those bad days, things like Andy teaches are what can motivate you to go to the next day.
His current book is something that I know is going to bring great value to you. It's called The Bottom of the Pool, Thinking Beyond the Boundaries to Achieve Extraordinary Results by Andy Andrews. Highly recommend it. And Victoria, you're a motivator. You go out and speak.
I do. I go out and speak. I love it.
You know the impact that you can have on the lives that you meet one-on-one and in group settings.
It's very humbling. It's really like you share from your heart, you share your truth, your own truth, where you were. Because honestly, David, we don't have time to get into my whole story. But if we did, from my childhood to going through divorce myself and all the different things, on paper, I shouldn't be sane. I shouldn't be somebody who still has energy and is excited about life and happy and tries to see the positive outlook of things. But I look at things like we live one life here on earth, and I don't want to be a victim of my past. I want to be a survivor.
One other thing I love about him is that he has started his own little podcast. It's called The Professional Noticer, which is absolutely remarkable.
Yeah,
and he just does it on his own.
That's astonishing.
I would just encourage you to check out this book, check out his podcast. He is the real deal.
So thanks for listening, and until next time.
We'll see you next week right here on CIA, Contagious Influencers of America. Bye-bye.